Welcome to Mind Renovation Nation, the show that equips, challenges, and empowers small multifamily investors to think differently, act boldly, and grow strategically. Brought to you by Red Maples, a real estate performance advisory service for small multifamily investors. This show is hosted by Nathan Bush, a seasoned property manager, leadership coach, and creator of the Caesar Method. Each episode dives deep into lessons from real-world experience, conversations with trusted mentors, and the proven strategies Nathan has used to build and manage successful real estate ventures. Today's episode is all about what's on Nathan's mind. Raw, relevant, and real. If you're tuning in live, don't forget to drop your questions in the comments. Nathan will tackle as many as time allows. Subscribe now on YouTube for more actionable insights and visit nathanbushmba.com for free resources to help grow your real estate business. It's time to renovate your thinking and elevate your results.
Have you ever wondered what to do in the next step of your real estate journey? Maybe you just got started, but you're wondering, okay, I did one deal. Now I'm on to my second one or my third one. Today's guest, I've got an amazing show lined up for you today. Today's guest is going to share with you some impactful information that's going to take you step by step through the process of growing your real estate business. So if you're just starting or just getting started, or you've been investing for a long time, today's guests are going to show you what to do to take that next step. Sometimes it's a feeling that we have of uncomfortability inside. Sometimes it's a mindset. Sometimes it's working with our partner in order to be able to do so. And that's what I want to dive into today with Sarah and Nathan Zierer. Sarah and Nathan are powerhouses in the real estate industry. They have a strong foundation for any business partnership. Nathan is a licensed architect, originally from Chicago. He spent over a decade designing and revitalizing historic buildings that were like boutique hotels. And then Sarah, well, she's a native to St. Louis, former high school math teacher turned IT project manager, and she brings precision, structure, and execution in every project. Together, they've mastered the art of turning neglected properties into high-performing investments. Combining Nathan's eye for design and Sarah's operational genius, their real estate journey began in 2013. I'm going to let them tell their story of how they grew their organization and where they're at today. But I don't want you to miss this. This is critical. They're doing this together. Real estate is not something to be done alone. And so I want to bring up Nathan and Sarah to the stage. What's up, guys? How are you?
Good. How are you?
Hi.
I'm fantastic. I appreciate you so much taking the time as a powerhouse couple to talk about your real estate journey and how you got to where you're at. Now, you and I have had an opportunity to talk a little bit. We're both have attended a group I actually sponsor called Tours and Pours that's here locally in St. Louis, and that's how we know each other. But why don't you take Sarah and Nathan just a little bit of time and kind of explain your background, how you got into real estate?
Sure. So we started in real estate in 2013. We bought a single family house down in the Benton Park neighborhood. It was purchasing a house that we thought would be a good investment to fix up. We were looking for the fixer, but we didn't realize what that actually was at the time. And then we also knew we were looking for a neighborhood at the same time that looked like it was going to grow as well. So Benton Park neighborhood kind of happened to be the right spot, the right time. And we, over the course of about 9 years, gut renovated that house down to bones, talking windows, roofs, masonry repairs on the whole third floor, kitchens, bathrooms, electrical. I mean, it was the works. And then 2020 came around, and I had been trying to convince her for a little while to get into real estate investing as another form of income. And that was a perfect time because we found a single family home that she was comfortable with. It was dipping a toe in the water. And purchased that, and that's kind of when it all started.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, Sarah, I'm interested from your perspective. What did Nathan say to you to get you to move off of the idea that, like, go to work, get a job, put put all your money into 401k, all that kind of stuff, and invest into real estate? I'm very curious.
I would say there were kind of 3 points that finally convinced me. He did, I will admit, through Bigger Pockets podcasts and various other real estate podcasts, would on the side just send those to me to listen to periodically over lunches. So that at least got the wheels turning. The second thing was probably the fact that I am numbers driven. I was a high school math teacher. I'm very analytical. So if you can prove it to me with facts, I'm much more likely to be on board. So he actually created his own calculator initially and ran multiple different properties, showing me that he knew what he was talking about and what kind of profit it could turn, which definitely helped. And I think the really seal the deal third point was the fact that he said it in a way, and I may butcher this a little bit, that, okay, worst case scenario, we build up these rentals and they go so sideways that we lose all our money. What's the worst case scenario? Oh, well, we go back and we get jobs like we were already doing. That's the worst case scenario. So it seems silly to not take a risk on that when the best case scenario could be that we build a real estate portfolio, improve a community, have a business we can run ourselves in our own time, and not be beholden to someone else's time frame. So those 3 key little factors there over the course of many months and conversations that I'm sure he was getting worn down and patience were what kind of flipped it for me to be like, yeah, there's no reason not to try this.
Yeah. So I heard you say some great things about how not only did he share with you that the Bigger Pockets podcast, which I think that was a genius strategy, not for convincing somebody, but to legitimately showing social proof that other people are out there doing it and growing their real estate business and giving somebody a vision and some hope to say, okay, if they can do it, then I surely can do it. And so that right there was incredible. And the fact, Sarah, that you respected Nathan enough to listen to the podcasts, that's another big step, because I know a lot of people that are out there thinking right now, as they're watching this webinar, live cast that we're doing, podcast that I'm recording, they are literally saying to themselves, my wife would never listen to the podcast. My husband would never listen to that podcast. And the fact that you did gave you the ability to take that next step, because you have to get educated before you can get started. Nobody's going to take step 2 until they first take step 1, which is learn how to do this industry. So Nathan, then I'm interested. So here did you do Benton Park with permission or without permission? How did that start?
Sort of with and without permission. She was on board to buying a house, but at the time we could only buy in the county because she's from the county originally. And I'm from Chicago, and I was like, you can buy a 120-year-old brick, beautiful home for like $100,000, and no one's just snapping these up. I don't know why. And basically, I convinced her we're young, let's move to the city, let's start there. And if it doesn't work out, we'll sell the house, we'll move out to county, Baldwin, Manchester, wherever, and we can change from there. Now, since we've done that, now she loves the city, so it's worked out pretty well in my favor.
And as a little caveat for anyone debating the where to live, we took bike rides down in different, we drive down with our bicycles and bike around different neighborhoods that we were potentially considering, and actually had a different property under contract first. And the day we went under contract on it was the day we happened to bike past the house we ended up buying, and called our realtor at 1:00 in the afternoon and said, hey, cancel that contract. We need to write one on this one. Right now, this is it. And same day wrote the contract for the one we ended up purchasing.
Yeah.
We both instantly knew together that was the one.
I mean, forget driving for dollars. You were biking for dollars.
Yeah.
That's fun.
I will say, go ahead.
So when you put in that initial offer, though, I am curious. So when you put in your initial offer, were you on the house that you ended up getting, were you thinking to yourself, there's no way I'm getting this house? Were you thinking to yourself, oh no, we're getting this house. This is definitely a done deal. I'm overpaying for this house. I'm underpaying. What were the thoughts that you were having as you guys were putting in that offer?
So we were worn out on looking at houses, because we had been looking, and we kind of did it the wrong way when we started out, where we weren't going and looking at photos first. We were doing a lot of setting up and go to this showing, go to that showing. So it was actually a lot of energy consumed to go do that. I think it was good, but it can wear you out quickly. But by the time we got to this house, we saw from the outside, it had all the character we wanted on it, and it was perfect. Now, when it comes to the price side of it, I am someone who has to get a deal. Even then, when I didn't even know really what I was doing, I needed to get a deal. And I think the house was originally listed for $140,000, and we went in and made an offer at like $120. Something like, there's no way they're going to take this, but it's a deal, and we're going to start there. And apparently our realtor knew their realtor, and then there was a third party that they both didn't like as realtors, and we ended up kind of getting a mid deal on it. So we ended up buying it for $126,500. So we still got a deal, and was a lucky first break, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got a deal, and then did you guys live in that house while you were renovating it, and then went on to renovate your second single family home, or how did that go?
So we did the renovation in phases. So the first renovation phase was we did the living room, dining room. There was a powder room on the first floor, and then the master bedroom and the second bedroom, and then the hall bath that was upstairs on the second floor. We did that in renovation 1, and that we did while we were living in an apartment and commuted every night. We did that for 3.5 months. 6 hours every weeknight, and then every Saturday and Sunday for 10 to 12 hours each day. I remember specifically that she wasn't very happy with me because we only went to like 2 party events over those 3.5 months. But
and there were a couple, I'll say more than a couple, all-nighters.
Yeah, there was
to prep for some contractors, like the few that we did hire. And I was still teaching, so we would literally get home at 6 a.m. enough in time to shower and run right back out the door. And my poor students could look at me and go, "You guys need to be nice today. Miss McBride doesn't have a ton of sleep." But I mean, it was fine. They were very sweet, and we hit our deadlines, which was good. So. Yep.
And then, of course, as any renovation and house owner will ever know, the weekend we moved in was Thanksgiving weekend.
December 1st.
Oh, December 1st. And the heat went out on the first floor.
Like furnace just died.
Yep. So we had no heat because we went and we did one of the home warranty programs.
Oh, yeah.
And they kind of messed with us, and it took a whole month for it to get turned back on. So New Year's Eve, we ended up having heat turned back on the house.
30 minutes into our New Year's Eve party, and that was after 4 contractors over the course of the month.
It was rough.
That's incredible. You know, I have a lot of people. We run a property management business, and I was at a meetup group the other day, actually Gateway to Freedom. I was on a property manager panel, and I was speaking in that property manager panel, and I was asked the question, how do you guys deal with home warranties? And I said, we don't. It's a management company.
That's fair.
And not because I don't think that it's that there's value for the homeowner that bought the warranty. That's cool. But you lose out on so much specifically with tenants and all kinds of other stuff if the property's occupied on delayed service. A lot of times they won't, the warranty company won't take action and get things taken care of quick enough in order to satisfy people living inside the units. So, you know, if you have a homeowner's warranty, it's really not worth the $400 or $500 that you paid for it, unless you're doing it to, you know, protect the HVAC system like you guys did, and the property's not going to be occupied for a couple of months. Yep. So that's kind of the big deal. And I talk through that with owners all the time, but they just don't, they think that buying the home warranty is going to protect them from losing money, and they're not. The tenant's going to end up moving out if they go a month without heat. That's just what happens.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing that. So you renovated this one over time, and then what happened to get into? So I have so many questions about this. So what work did you guys do personally, and which work did you hire contractors out to do on that first house?
We did all the demo. We did the vast majority of the painting. I do have an uncle that is a painter, and then my dad was kind enough to come over and help. So my dad's a carpenter and his dad's a carpenter. So they both at various points came in to help with it. And his dad built out some pool trim, but we also, let's see, what did we do?
So we hired out all the plumbing work.
Yeah.
which at the time was a great deal, and that we got we got the whole house replumbed for $5,500, all new waste and water lines. So it was a good deal. But then we hired out drywall work, and
we hired out concrete.
Yep.
But we built the garage with my dad and brother. That was a family team effort too. But we built the garage ourselves. We had the roof completely torn off and replaced.
Mm-hmm.
They got to show us a core sample of the 15 layers of roofing that had never been removed that we had taken off so that we could put a proper TPO on. We hired a mason.
Yeah. Roof, windows. Windows we hired out. But like all the framing, I had a buddy who was an electrician, so he helped us. He did all the final connections, but I did all the coring and fishing all the wire and all that for him.
Yeah.
That wasn't fun, but
we did all the basically all the demo and finished work ourselves.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, incredible. And then, so how was the occupancy process for you guys? Do you guys have an occupancy inspection on the property?
We did when we bought it, and basically kind of asked the questions around a little bit, and people were like, it's, if you're kind of doing the finished piece, it's, you don't really need a permit, but then the stuff that was permitted, like the sewer lateral and all that was done, the roofing, the windows, they came out and did all those inspections.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's great. So so now you're living in this house that's been renovated, and then you guys make the decision you're going to do your second one. So walk me through that process. How did you find your second deal?
The second deal, kind of going backwards a little bit, when I started sending Sarah the podcast, I knew that I didn't want to inundate her with them. So I would listen to ones that were very specific about beginners and people who had kind of made it a little bit. So I would only send maybe one every other month just to give her enough of a taste to try it. But then when we got to looking for houses, I had been looking for a while and running the math, and this little single family home down in the Patch neighborhood, it cash flowed like crazy. Like there was no downside to it. And I just said, let's go take a look at it. Let's go and actually see it. And when we saw it in person, she was like, okay, this is manageable. It's not, the roof isn't caving in. We got to, put all new plumbing and everything in this house. It was just, there's repairs everywhere. The building had been vacant for probably 2 years or something at that point, and just kind of slight neglect. And yeah.
It was really stinking cute too. I mean, for the price and location, and it was near a local brewery, so you knew you had some marketability there. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So it was a cute property. It was near a brewery. You guys you were sending podcasts on a pretty regular basis to Sarah and Nathan, and you had been running numbers, and then you just decided so you guys pulled the trigger, put an offer in on this property. Did you use a realtor?
We did use a realtor. I think one of the things that I got her to be convinced on was, instead of having a conventional 30-year fixed rate loan, we tightened it up and did a 15-year fixed rate. And I said, we could even throw a little bit of money extra at it. That way, if it pay itself down, we'll get a little extra equity over time. And I think the mortgage, the PITI on it was probably $570. And it's like, I think we knew the market rate on it was going to be about $1,100 in rent. So it met the 2% plus rule at the time.
That's
and the
awesome.
15-year made me feel better too, because I felt like we weren't going to be out as much money with the interest accruing, and it would also just get paid off faster.
Yeah, less risk that way. Yeah, I mean, I totally understand, and that's part of it too, right? There's a psychological risk and ability for tolerance on you can tolerate and what you feel excited about and what you don't feel excited about, and taking on the responsibility for 30 years on something, if things change within that time frame, not being able to refinance and all kinds of stuff, those things all matter. And so I totally appreciate that and respect that. Now, Nathan and Sarah, this is an incredible journey, because what I love about this story so far is that you had experience with a renovation to begin with. You did one. You had lived in the home that you had renovated. And so when you walked into this cute property that you saw the numbers that could cash flow, you knew what the experience was like of staying up overnight to finish a renovation so that your contractors, your plumber could get in and get this stuff done and go into the school. And you knew what the experience was going to be like. And you know what the potential downside now was, at least of time commitment and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm sure you were saying to yourself, if we can get this one done in 3 months and on the market and all that kind of stuff, I think we can do this for another 3 months and get through it. Was that kind of the thought processes at the time?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And we actually pushed hard and got the building turned over in about 5 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And we had a tenant in there immediately. It was great. It set up perfectly. And I think it was the second month or third month after that I remember the check came in, and I said, "No, we got paid for the rent on the rental house." And she goes, "Oh, but we didn't do anything." And I go, "Yeah, that's the whole point." And all of a sudden, she's like, "Okay, we need to go buy more."
Yeah, that's great. So, and how much did you rent it for? Was it $1,100? Did you get $1,100 on it?
We actually knew the person who moved into it, and we ended up renting it to them for a discount at $1,000, just because we're like, okay, let's just make it easy. We got someone that we knew would pay, and it wasn't going to be an issue, and we didn't have to go through the vetting service on the very first project. There was a lot of first steps on this one, and it was nice to take one of them out that we didn't have to be so concerned on.
Did you know the tenant prior to buying the property and knew that there was a possibility that this person was going to move into this one for you? Or did you, when you finally bought the property, showed it to somebody, they loved it, but you knew the person?
So I've known the person since 6th grade, actually. So the property had no bearing on that particularly. It kind of was a timing of things going on in both our lives. And it was one of those, as we got into it and really assessed and got it kind of close to ready for a tenant, that I just threw it out to them and said, "Hey, we have this thing, absolutely no pressure. If you'd like to come check it out, more than happy to show it to you, but no offense if you're not." And they checked it out and absolutely loved it, and lived there for about 4.5 years. And we haven't had any vacancy. We actually know the current tenants as well. But so that's worked out quite well. But yeah, it was just happenstance of like timing with that particular person.
Yeah. Okay. So you bought the property and then showed it to somebody, and they were like, "Yeah, I definitely would live in your property. That'd be fantastic to live there." So that's great. Yeah. And did you guys at that time, did you do any background checks and credit checks and all that kind of stuff on the tenant that you moved into your property? Or did you know them well enough that you just moved them in and signed a lease with them?
That one we didn't do the background checks on. We knew them more than well enough that we didn't need to do it for that one. Since then, we've done all the proper checks on any tenants that we've moved in, though.
Yeah. So they were there for 4 years, and then you since then have re-rented that property. Mm-hmm. What was the experience like re-renting that property? Did you guys go through and list the property on Zillow, and how did you get it filled?
Again, word of mouth and timing. So we actually have 2 individuals in there now that we also know well, that we didn't have to particularly vet. So there was no normal. This house has not been a normal process as far as tenants go, even once, but in the best way possible.
I totally appreciate that, because this is the real story of how stuff gets done. Like, a lot of people think that they see online, or they listen to a podcast, or they hear a story and they think somehow, some way, shape, or form that it's going to be easy. And there's a couple of things to point out about how this process is not an easy process. Number one, you heard about when they did their first house, they were staying up overnight to meet contractors, and it was a complete renovation deal. And they personally lived in that home for a period of time. You heard about how the heat went out on them. They lived without heat for an entire month. This is not an easy process. Then you heard, okay, well, they knew the person that they moved into the unit. They lived there for 4 years. They did make money off of that property. But the reality of it is that they did know somebody. They were able to move somebody into their property that they had a personal relationship with, that they knew, and that they already had trust established with. And so there wasn't a lot of traditional property management effort that went into that specific relationship. So if you bury your head in the sand, you don't know anybody, you don't have great relationships with a whole bunch of people, and you think that your first property is going to go real smoothly. Well, unless you had that relationship established and you knew how to screen people properly, you might end up putting somebody in your property that will tear it up, not pay you, not take care of the place. And then you'll get discouraged. That's what will also happen is, so you'll go through that process. You'll try to rent it out to the wrong person. They'll tear up the property, not pay the rent, and you'll get discouraged and want to sell the house and be out of real estate. But that's not what happened for Nathan and Sarah. They didn't take that path. They had relationships established with people that they could trust on that first property. And so then what happened? So you went to your first property, your second property now. Talk me through this third property.
So I want to point out one quick important caveat on that first one. Even though we've known all our tenants so far, we still very much put leases in place that both parties agreed on, and we sign them and have legal documents saved just so that you don't lose those relationships. Like, this wasn't hey, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Like, we still put the proper legal, whatever you want to call it, in place to make sure that we're all on the up and up here.
And then
incredibly important. It's also incredibly important probably that you got an application completed on them too. In the event that things went south, at least you have an application on file that you have social security numbers and documented information, so you could file an eviction if they didn't pay rent.
Yep. And I will say our second property was a mixed bag of the complete opposite of what happened.
Very mixed bag.
We bought a duplex then the following spring, and we inherited tenants that had been in there and actually just moved out just a year ago now, but had been there 28 years. She took care of the place. She did everything. She painted, she changed light bulbs, she maintained the yard. It was great. It was a perfect, everything you could ask for in a tenant. And eventually she ended up moving out. She got old enough that she didn't want to deal with stairs, and she went into kind of a retirement.
She wanted to downsize because it was a 2-1, 1,300 square foot. And so she downsized into a 1-bed, 1-bath, just for less to take care of in general. But very sweet, very hardworking, easy to communicate with.
But our second floor, which was vacant when we purchased it, was a great trial run for finding tenants. I'll let Sarah tell that one.
I was a little overly optimistic. So we did the proper screenings. We used a platform that would do the background checks for us and have some pre-set up leases to make sure all the bases were covered, all local and state rules were followed, since we were new to proper leasing, not just to people that we knew. And one of the applications that came through seemed like a very solid application, solid income. The biggest thing was it was a younger person that this was going to be their first place on their own, which I know scares a lot of landlords away, I'm sure, because there is no rental history, if you will. But I, having been a high school teacher, had a little soft spot in my heart of everyone says, go get a job, but every job says, well, we want you to have experience. Okay, so where do you get it? So I was hoping based on application and income that we could help this person navigate their first rental and build up some history so that then when they do move on, we would be that experience that everyone's looking for, if you will. And that didn't quite go as planned. I think the individual was very sweet, but because it was their first place and because of how young they were, there were a lot of parties, and they were the upper tenant, I might add, over the more senior or lower tenants. And so they'd be up till 3 a.m., blaring music, video games, having parties. So much so that a neighboring landlord managed to, I guess, Googled owners of the property and found his work phone number, which we never give out, and my work email address, which I never gave out, to contact us out of concern, letting us know that if we couldn't remedy it, they were going to reach out to the authorities. So we quickly had to have a conversation with the tenant to kind of work out something where we parted ways peacefully, explained the situation, and he moved out on his own accord. Thankfully, we did not end up having to file an eviction, so that we could remedy the situation before it escalated any further. And the first floor tenant did reach out to me during that time too, to communicate as well. So I had already kind of been looped in and was working through it before the neighboring landlord reached out to us as well.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
You guys still there? Sorry about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
On my side, I don't know what was going on with the internet. So I did hear the part about the tenants that were having parties upstairs, and then the Wi-Fi cut out. So if you wouldn't mind, if you could elaborate on that just a little bit. So what happened then? So there was a tenant that you did screen, you did find the information about them, their background, but you had a bleeding heart for the fact that this was their first rental with no rental history, and how do you get a job if you don't have experience? And so you mind sharing a little bit about the party animal that was in the top floor?
Yeah, so it was them and friends they had over, to their credit, like that were staying multiple days, and we're talking like past a weekend, like 10 days plus a month, and we discovered that. So of course that was an issue because they weren't on the lease. But the first floor tenant that we had inherited reached out to us personally, which I was thankful that they spoke up and didn't just move. In addition to that, so as we were dealing with it, contacting the upstairs tenant, trying to talk with them and reason with them, and kind of coach them and teach them, since it was their first place. A neighboring landlord also reached out to us and somehow found his work number that we never shared, my work email that we never shared. I think just trying to look up owners of the building to let us know, if this was what's going on, this is what they're seeing. And there was, some guests leaving that upstairs unit had been leaving trash in neighboring yards as they left parties. And this is a very quiet neighborhood. This duplex is in, I should add. This is not a youthful bar district neighborhood by any means. So he let us know, I wanted to give you a heads up first as a courtesy, but if it doesn't improve, I am going to have to call the authorities, which is completely fair on his part. I appreciated him reaching out. And thankfully, over the course of various conversations with that young tenant, we agreed to mutually part ways, and he thankfully left on his own accord. The unit was not destroyed, and we did not have to file an eviction. So I count ourselves very lucky at how that resolved itself to some degree, and that because it could have gone certainly much worse.
Yeah. Was he paying the rent?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
At least that was good. Yes. He was paying the rent.
Yeah. That's the hard part, right? Like he's paying his rent. I don't know. He's paying the rent. It's hard to just.
No.
Yeah, but I get it. I mean, I'm teasing a little bit. Like that there's some truth in, like, for a lot of new landlords, that's very difficult, is to make that decision to get rid of a bad tenant, even though they're paying their rent, because some people become desperate on that revenue that they're receiving off of that unit, as opposed to being in a financial place where you're okay that you bought that third or fourth unit. So kudos to you guys for dealing with the bad tenant. And the one downstairs, I guess when he left, that person was happy, would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Ecstatic. And they've loved every tenant that's been up there since, I think.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right. So that was a duplex. So you got a single family, and now a duplex. And so I can see the momentum growing now. What was the next acquisition purchase property?
So the next one is her pride and joy. This is the first building that she found, and
Yep.
she did the numbers and came to me and was like, we need to buy this. We need to buy it now. So tell them all about it.
Okay, so that previous duplex we bought in April of 21. We found this one in June of 21, so just 2 months later. And mind you, as far as financing goes, obviously we were not able to save enough money in that 2-month window to like magically have another down payment. We actually had set up and pulled a HELOC on our primary residence that was kind of sitting at the ready to use for another acquisition. And so I found this property. I thought it was under market value for the area to begin with. And he had already kind of taught me, don't pay market value, or at least don't offer it, like see if there's wiggle room for it, because most people list higher than what they're expecting. So I went in kind of low and maybe found my little cutthroat fun of negotiating that I didn't know I was going to like so much. And we locked it up closer to asking, but once we walked it, I mean, the best example I can give you is when we walked in the bathroom floor and it felt a little squishy, and the toilet could move entirely more than it should be able to. So we severely countered at a much lower price and didn't have to, in my opinion, come up too terribly high from that. We still got it under market. It's one of the front and back duplexes, which I really like because it makes it easier to work on, because you're not disrupting necessarily one tenant to work on the other unit, since they're really two separate. I mean, they share a wall in the middle, but they're kind of their own same level. And the really cool part of what got me super excited is that it was positioned right between two major medical campuses. And I had kind of gotten an ear. I have a cousin that's a travel nurse. And so to me, this looked like the perfect opportunity to turn it into a midterm rental. So we managed to put an offer in and lock it up the day it was listed. I mean, I think if we had waited even 12 hours later, I don't know that we would have gotten it.
Yeah, I think the original listing price was $187. I think she ended up putting an offer in at like $150, and they countered at $160, and that's where we ended up closing it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so was that a single family duplex? What was that one?
So that was a front back duplex. They're both 2-1 units, each one is, and they share a basement.
And then what was the rents that you got off of that?
So this was our first forte, I guess, before we get into rent. This is our first forte into renovation. We were inadvertently doing the Burr method that we didn't realize was the Burr method at the time. We bought it and renovated it, and we put about $100,000 into this property. We put all new bathrooms, kitchens, all new plumbing throughout the building, updated some of the electrical fixtures, paint, windows, roof,
sewer lateral,
and parking pad, fences. I mean, it ended up being basically a fully redone house, top to bottom, which I think has served us well. But that one, yeah, we were all in for about $100,000 in renovations, and then we ended up then financing out and getting a full traditional loan on it, and basically got all of our money back out of it.
So 2 key things here that were kind of surprises for anyone looking to get into this, thinking they can follow same steps. We had 2 surprises even in doing that. One was that we intended to use the HELOC that we had to acquire multiple properties, but due to a delay in the closing process, we ended up having to close in cash. We had made a cash offer with the intent of financing in tandem, and the financing didn't come through quick enough. So we had to close in cash and still have enough cash to renovate. The second surprise to that is the fact that we intended to do kind of I'll say, deeper fluff and buff, if you will, where it was just going to be pull up some of the finishes, but not almost gut the place and do the roof and do the lateral and all that. We did our proper inspections, but as we tore in, it was one of those, like, you keep pulling up more and more thinking you're going to get to the good part. And we just ended up gutting the whole kitchen, the whole bathrooms, because they needed it. So it was kind of a surprise gut, surprise, all the money's in it. Like, it was and you just work through it, but it was kind of entertaining from that standpoint, and especially in hindsight.
And thankfully, our house value on our original house, where our HELOC was pulled, had grown enough in value that we had enough HELOC that we could actually cover the purchase and cover the majority of the renovation out of our HELOC work. Yeah. And I think that saved us. Otherwise, we would be in a totally different position right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you deal, before we get into you have one more property, right?
Yeah. We can go back to the rents too.
Okay, cool. So, but there's something I want to dive into in this very conversation that you brought up, is that there was chaos going on. There was some financial chaos. There was some stress involved with all of that. It's difficult for people because this is large financial transactions. The reason that real estate, in my opinion, is one of the ultimate levers to pull to generating wealth is because it's one of the ultimate levers to pull that has the most risk associated with it. I often say to people, the higher the risk, the higher the likelihood of failure, not the higher the reward, the higher the likelihood of failure. The people think turnkey properties are the way to go. And when they find out that you buy them with tenants in them, that's not turnkey, because there's a lot of stuff that's about to happen that you don't know. That's why they're selling it, right? You don't buy somebody else's success in this business. We buy somebody else's problem in this business, and then we solve it. And that's what makes us different, whether it's financial, whether it's construction, whether it's management, whether it's whatever, it doesn't matter. You're buying somebody else's problem. And so how do you deal as a family with the financial chaos? It's one thing to ask, somebody, how do you deal with stress? But there's a family aspect to what you guys are doing, and you clearly matter to each other. So how do you guys deal with the financial stress of taking that kind of risk?
I think we kind of ebb and flow. It seems that when one person is getting worn down and tired, the other person's there who grabs the reins and says, okay, we're going to drive on, and kind of carries you to the next checkpoint or next whatever moment in time that gives you a defining moment to reinvigorate the other. And there's times where, she's, not feeling it and needs to just say, throw the towel in, we're getting rid of all this, we're not doing it anymore. And then there's other times where it swings back in my court and I'm in that boat and she's over there going, no, we just got to keep moving, just keep going.
But I think a big thing that we worked into, and I think we've done it fairly consistently since we started, especially real estate, honestly, but even before that, I could be off base here. I think we talk more than some couples and friends. I mean, like, excessively communicate with each other, because we try to make it a point, and anyone could do this in any way, shape, or form, obviously, but we try to make it a point to go on at least 30 minutes worth of walk or 30 minutes worth of just sitting and chatting with each other about anything. It doesn't have to be real estate, but that kind of helps make sure we both know how the other's feeling, thinking, what's weighing on them, what are they excited about. And so when, especially in the instances of these stressful, potentially stressful anyway, financial moments, having those minutes to breathe away from everything, where we even just go for a walk around the block and just throw all the ideas at each other and to each other so that we can talk through it and kind of get on the same page and problem solve, is huge. I mean, I know that sounds super cliche, but communication is literally, I think, one of the biggest tools we have in our box that's gotten us this far.
So husband and wife business partners, you're not sitting down looking at an income statement and a financial sheet and trying to talk through like net operating income and cash flow and assets and leverage and equity. You're not having that conversation.
I mean, we do have those too, but yeah, we have financial workbooks. He's put together great financial statements. I mean, we do absolutely look at those too, but
do you guys have like a monthly like review of finances on where you're at and stuff that's going on together? And is it like a sit down formal business meeting when you do it? Or is it just kind of, you got the reports, you share them, and then you just talk about them on your walks? How does it go for your family?
So we, about the mid of every month, we sit down and we update our personal financial statement. And there's some things that she has quick access to for accounts or whatever. And there's things that I do. So both of us have to end up naturally having to sit together and kind of fill the spreadsheet out together. And then we can kind of see the wins and losses kind of in real time being every 30 days or so. Yeah. And I think that kind of keeps us abreast of what's happening. And then when we start to see, stresses in one area or another, we can kind of adjust in that quick reactionary. I think that the conversations that we have then between each of those sit downs, looking at our financial statements, are what help us allow to be more open and saying things that otherwise I think other people may be afraid to say because they're afraid of their partner's reaction, versus we're basically open and clear all the time. There's nothing hidden.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough for a lot of families, is that being open and transparent around the financial statements, whether they're business transactions or whether they're personal transactions that are going on, and then working towards common goals in those financial statements too. You see an area of interest that you got to correct, everybody corrects it together. It's not one person trying to correct it versus the other. And that's what I love about your guys' story, is that it's not a one-sided, one person's ambition, a level of success. It's a team effort where the two of you are achieving these goals together. And so to that, I have to commend you guys, because this is not a common story, guys. I hope, you might, I don't know if you feel that way or if you've talked with others or whatever, but oftentimes in real estate, you have one partner running off in the family, taking reckless risk without the buy-in from all of the stakeholders involved, and it creates conflict in the relationship. What would it gain somebody to own $10 million of real estate and lose the love of their life? That doesn't help anybody, No. And so what you're doing and what you're sharing with the audience is what I consider to be as close to the right way, by the book. The best way to do a family business is to do it together. You can't have one person not knowing what the other person's doing and expect there to be good results long term. It just doesn't happen like that. John Maxwell wrote this book, Becoming a Person of Influence. That's the book that I'm looking down at right now. And in this book, Becoming a Person of Influence, he says, listening generates ideas. That's the title of the topic. He goes on to say, fresh and innovative ideas help us find new ways to solve old problems, to generate new products, and to process to keep our organization growing and to continue growing and improving personally. Listening. How important is listening in your guys' conversation more than talking?
I don't know. We talk a lot, and I guess inadvertently we listen a lot. So it's a 50-50, and it's truly a 50-50 relationship between the two of us. So I think that is a key part of it. And it's not, I shouldn't say that, it's not 50-50 every day. There are days where someone picks up the slack and they're carrying 70% of the weight. And then there's other days where it swings back the other way and the other one's carrying 60%. And, it kind of ebbs and flows, but I think that communication and that talking and expressing yourself is, I think, a huge part of what we had for successful so far.
Yeah. And something we started implementing a few years ago is we do at the very least an annual goals date. And sometimes we sit down and formalize it and write it out. Sometimes we just go on a hike so that we're truly completely away from any other influence and in nature. And we talk through just different aspects of our lives and where we feel like we are and kind of what our goals are on it separately, but then how we can support each other and either align or at least support differences. But just to kind of do a reset, if you will, and make it even more clear. And that kind of helps set the tone for all those conversations that follow through the year. If we think about it, we check in like quarterly, but we've not been so great about that. We at least try to do, it's usually around our anniversary.
That's great.
And I will say the other part of our conversation I think really helps in comparison to, I think, others who say that they are communicating, is that when we go for our walk or whatever, we don't bring our phones. It's that way you're not walking and texting and responding to this person or checking on whatever. It's just us out, walk out the front door and just start walking some sidewalks around our house. It's not, we don't do anything elaborate with it, but just to kind of isolate us from the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my next question, is how do you listen well? And you just gave the answer to that question, which is by totally focusing on what the other person is saying and not being distracted by a bunch of other stuff. And I think that what you're saying is so critical too about, family business relationships, also business partnerships and the whole 9 yards, is that sometimes we get real busy and we are working hard to achieve a goal. And so we get so tunnel visioned and we work so hard towards that goal that we forget that if we're having conversation, especially important conversation, it's important to eliminate the distractions, to focus solely on the other person, and to care, literally care about what the other person's saying. I can't say it any differently than that. And what you guys are sharing, I mean, you're sharing a demonstration of how to do that. And so thank you for sharing that with the audience. All right, we're coming up on the hour time frame now, and so I want to get to the small multifamily aspect of what you're doing right now, mid-size multifamily aspect of what you're doing right now. You guys bought the most recent property. When did you buy this most recent property?
October of 22. October of 22.
Awesome.
So it's a 8-plex in South City.
Yeah.
And how did you find this deal?
Like all of our deals, we're not we haven't done creative searches so far. All of our deals have so far been on the MLS. Nothing, no wholesalers or anything like that. But
we have a really great investor-friendly realtor. I will give him credit. That was helpful in this one for sure.
Yeah, and I saw it come up. He showed it to me. I started running the numbers on it, and it was obviously priced because it was somebody's problem, like you said earlier. Mm-hmm. It was somebody's problem that they were unloading and they needed to get out of it, and they didn't want to deal with it any longer. And we saw it. I think it was originally listed for $420,000 or $430,000, and we ended up closing at $380,000.
That's great. And so what was the problem that you saw, that you identified, and how did you know that this was a problem you wanted to buy?
Well, I looked at the T12, and it showed that two people hadn't been paying for like 18 months at that point. There was, I think, 2 units vacant, or one was vacant and one was about to be vacant. So, and then when you want to go, this one we actually bought sight unseen, or bought remotely. We had our realtor go through. He walked us through FaceTime and showed us how things were at, and then we got photos of it in better detail. But we actually never stepped foot into the property for another 6 months or so, I think.
We had long since closed by the time we actually stepped foot in it because we were living out of state at the time.
but this property had lots of deferred maintenance. It It was a great building. It was a mid-60s, all brick, 2-story. I mean, it was, if you're investing in South City, those are kind of like the creme de la creme because they're built like rock, but they're not so old that you're having to worry about your cast iron plumbing stack collapsing in your basement.
Yeah. Yeah. So the major problems were tenants not paying their rent, where there were a couple vacancies, and you guys thought to yourself, okay, we can do this. We can do this from out of state. Were you crazy? What was the ultimate determination?
I think our parents thought we were a little crazy.
Yeah, we told them, oh yeah, we're buying a house, or we're buying an 8-unit building, and they're like, oh, you're living in Colorado. How are you gonna go see it? Oh, we never saw it. We just bought it.
We trust our realtor. He did a great walkthrough with us.
But it's we did it, and I think what sold me on it was I looked at all the comp rents in the area, and like the 1-beds that were not fixed up at all were renting for I think $600, and the rents in this building that we inherited of people that were paying, albeit not on time, where some of them I think were like $425 a month. I mean, it was the rents were super low, but it was justified to the building. The building hadn't been maintained, so you kind of get that problem. And we saw it, and we're like, okay, even if we just got a fresh paint on this thing, we should easily get rents to $600. And we bought the building for $47.5 a unit. It's still a good deal. But then we went through and we kind of took the mentality of a property we did before this, where we went in and we said, all right, we're going to get everything cleaned up extra nice, something more than what most people in this neighborhood might see. And we went in, all new flooring, all new trim, paint, blinds, all new interior doors, hardware.
New appliances,
new countertops, new vanities, medicine cabinets. I mean, we call it a heavy fluff and buff. We didn't get into any of the real systems, but it was a deep renovation.
Yeah.
And this is also a telltale story for anyone who's new to it. This project, we have gone through 5 contractors.
Yeah.
We should have been done in 6 to 9 months, and we are just now finishing about 2.5 years later.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
I think it's because we couldn't keep our eye on the contractors at all times. We had to take some face value from those on the ground telling us, hey, yeah, they hit this marker, this payment's due. And come to find out, when we moved back and could actually walk it more frequently ourselves, there was a lot of work that was either not done or not done correctly that we didn't discover until we moved back. And thankfully, this 5th contractor is absolutely fantastic and wonderful, and we've used him on multiple properties and projects now.
Yeah, that's great. So, yeah, there's so many things that get unpacked about contractors and all kinds of stuff. Your guys' story, though, is just inspirational, just in general. Totally excited for you. I'm looking forward to seeing what's next in your guys' future. But instead of talking about what's next in your future, let's talk to the newest real estate investor who's just getting started buying their first property. What piece of advice would both of you have for them as we close out?
I would say make sure to do your due diligence on numbers, like run your numbers and run them again. Look at the comps in the area. But I'm going to give you 2. The other thing I would say is go to some local meetup groups, network. I mean, the network that you build, not that they're going to do the work for you by any means, but they're going to be your support. They're going to be the person to bounce your ideas off of you, to find the contractors, to gut check your numbers. I mean, that's where the biggest support can come from, especially if you're brand new to it and by yourself. Go to those meetups and network and pick people's brains.
I'd say, to complement that, the other side of it is analysis paralysis is a real thing.
Yeah.
And no one ever learns to ride a bike in a seminar. You gotta actually do it and bite the bullet and just go for it. Now, go for it with caution on your first one, because there's a lot of new. But once you've got 1 and maybe 2 under your belt, it seemingly gets much simpler.
It's less stressful even when surprises pop up, because you've learned to problem solve better.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, incredible. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the show. If people wanted to reach out to you to get more information, network with you, connect with you, have a deal for you, how can they get a hold of you?
I think you can find both of us under our names on Facebook. And I am also, you can search me on Instagram. I will gladly respond and always happy to talk real estate.
There you go. We'll DM them on Facebook or real estate. Thank you very much, Nathan and Sarah. I really, truly appreciate you being a part of the show and being a part of the Mind Renovation Nation here with us.
Thanks for having us, Nathan.
Thanks.
All right. And that Renovation Nation brings us to the end of another episode. You know, I'm Nathan Bush. I'm your guide on this journey of real estate business growth. Remember, just like plants need the right air, soil, and care, our minds need the right environment to build a life of purpose, passion, and growth. Don't forget to get your citizenship to Mind Renovation Nation. The way you do that is you follow the show on YouTube, you go to my website, nathanbushmba.com, and then you subscribe, and then you share the show so that other people can join us every Friday at noon like you did today. When you do that, you get access to some insights that my team will get over to you, some tools, resources that are just incredible, and I think you really love them. Join me next time for some more insights, inspiration, of course, a little bit of that nation-building spirit that drives us to create a community united by shared values, purpose, and a commitment to leaving a lasting legacy. Don't forget, this organization, this company, and this group was built around values-based investing. Values-based investing is an extension of the philosophy of being a steward, not only of our finances, but of our values and vision for the future. Signing off from the heart of St. Louis, stay blessed, stay inspired, and remember, every day is a chance to renovate your nation. Thanks, guys.